that they operate. We've had the Ornn, we've had the Cassante. I remember Release Camille being played at support and stuff like that. Oh. Anyway.
Maybe this is what Oda1 meant in that interview he gave lately, where he said, when it comes to Worlds, everyone realizes top is OP, but top is always OP. Maybe that's what he means. It's that there's just all these top laners that just do everything. You know?
I mean, the NLC has already showed off a fair few top lane carries, so I don't know. Maybe there's some truths to Oda1's words. Definitely been around long enough to accumulate some wisdom like that. He's, what is he, like 28, 29 now?
Yeah, he's 28, I believe. Yeah.
I think in esports, terms, that's like dead, isn't it, essentially?
You know, I worked with that guy in 2016. I feel very old now.
Crikey, yeah.
Yeah, 2016 HUK. It was a fun time. I'm telling you, he's the best top player in the world. He's not playing in this game, but, you know, he gets where it is. He gets that these two champs in top lane are absolutely broken. And he's right. I trust him on that. Rifty already showing a good performance on the Kaysanto. Many people have shown a good performance on Camille at this point. So, yeah. Even though, you know, we think about them Vox and we think about Niter, this may be a game that comes down to the top laners. Let's see how Johan plays around this. That's going to be really interesting for me, because he somewhat ignored Banderas last time, right?
Well, and he didn't end up needing to gank that lane, but there are definitely occasions where the Vi was up in the top side, decided not to gank, and maybe Banderas could have gotten a kill, and you could have accelerated this the split push as Fiora in the previous game a little bit faster, so we'll have to see if that's an adaptation that Riddle's jungler is going to make. He's not going to be top lane for a while, though, because he has started on the northern quadrant of his jungle, same as No Name, both pathing towards bottom lane.
I mean, obviously they had a good showing today, right? But, like, Johan did that against a team of a lower caliber than Ruddy, right? And I wonder how Ruddy would react. No Name versus Johan, very good matchup here. He was matching his opponent Antwer yesterday. Can he just match Johan? Does he have a good read on this guy? He's playing a heavy ganking jungler that doesn't necessarily care about his own camp resets to the same extent. Maybe up to level 6 you do. That's how Trick used to play this champion out. But it gives him the opportunity to match Johan, to prevent Johan getting off what he wants. And to be like, no, you're not going to get the MVP today. You're not even going to get the W. The W is all there for Ruddy. And
it's a composition that definitely has reminders of what they were playing yesterday. We've got hyper-scaling mid laner who's going to build Rod of Ages, be incredibly tanky and do 1 million damage. We've got them Vox Knight here on the Sivir. We've got Rifty on the Cassante as well. It's sort of the who's who of champions that if you leave them alone, they will just take over the game.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those cruise control compositions, I guess you could say, right? It doesn't steer itself, but sometimes it might as well, you know? And it will eventually
as long as the Ruddy rudder is pointing in the right direction, they should be absolutely fine.
But let's not downplay the power of champions on Riddle, right? Zeri is in a ridiculous spot, and Reptile has a very good game on her yesterday. Lulu makes that so much worse. And look where Zeri is right now. She has the Cull in the bot lane, Lulu playing to her advantages against the possible Yuumi. Sure, Sivir isn't dropping all her HP there, but if they go even, Reptile's going to hit her item breakpoints before then Voxnay hits his, and that could be a better early.
Rifty. No Name looking for Banderas. The Sonic Wave into the resonating strike connects. They will eventually chase down Banderas, although he is running away pretty damn quickly. Fire Rain is moving over as well. Johan is here. The hook shot into the wall dive. This is very aggressive from the Riddle top laner, but they're going to be able to capitalize on it, as that is a double lockdown, and No Name has nowhere to go but his grave. First blood for Banderas.
Scuttle did some heavy lifting there, allowed Camille to get to the point where she was reunited with her team and she was going to get her E back up. a no-name. What looked to be a very simple play ended up being an overextension, and Riddle immediately able to capitalize against Ruddy. You pronounce those so similarly that I'm gonna get it mixed up at some point, and I'm terrified of that eventual sentence.
You'll only be heading for a Don Jake ratio on Twitter. There are worse fates, I assure you, mate.
Game ratio by
it's
Don
strong.
Jake. Never let it go.
I've seen it happen before. I've seen it happen before. I feel like it is a possibility. But, aside from that, as it stands, Riddle, first blood on a Camille of all things. This is absolutely brilliant. Going to get you towards that Divine Sundra spike a little bit quicker. And that is such an effective item, even against a champion like Cassante, who is a little bit problematic at the moment.
Both solo lanes hitting 6 right now, though, which is going to open some big map play opportunities for both the Rise and the Lissandra. So let's see, is Riddle just going to try to play through this priority they have topside, or what's the rest of the game plan? You see the Lissandra leaning up, even though all of Ruddy is leaning for this Drake. No name lands the Q, but he's not looking to overextend twice. Fool me once, you know. You can't get fooled again. Real OGs know that.
There's about 4 people in chat that understand that reference.
Don't make me. I felt old once already in this cast. Don't.
I mean, it's not mission accomplished yet for either of these teams, but it's definitely Riddle have gotten off to the better start, and No Name has been caught once more. It's the exact same place. It's the exact same fate. Another kill for Banderas.
No Name, he was able to match Antwer yesterday, but he is being met by this Riddle topside the entirety of this early game. Camille ran circles around him. Lissandra and Wukong have grouped up against him. He's not finding anything here. He's not matching anything. He's just getting caught out this game. It's not the same caliber, and Camille now 2-0 up. We may actually see a Cassante get shut down for once, which, I'm going to be real, is going to be kind of satisfying.
Champion does seem to persist, and we had questions of the Lee Sin pick, honestly, when it was locked in, right? We were saying this is a champion where you need to get something done in the early stages. You need to be visiting these lanes and getting positive things out of them. Well, 8 minutes in, 0-2, down CS on Johan as well. It's not a great look for the Ruddy jungler thus far.
I'm missing the Hecarim hover. That thing I'd still be thinking on one item. He's going to do some damage similar to Olaf, especially with the Sivir Yuumi on this composition. But with the Lee, yeah, I mean, you're delayed heavily on your level 6. Your ability to play with your lanes heavily diminished. And, I mean, the enemy composition kind of prevents you doing anything utility-wise aggressively into them outside of very minor circumstances. So just being more of a liability than anything in this game. Partly the pick and partly some of the play. Riddle have his number, alright? They just have his number. He is the one being matched.
It's not been a great start to him, but Ruddy hardly out of it. Yes, 2 kills down. Yes, Riddle have got themselves 1,500 gold lead. I wouldn't be surprised if most of that is on Banderas at this point, but Nita still here on the rise, nearly level 9, nearly fully upgraded that Q, and Denvoxne still farming up a Storm, matching Reptile. Both of these AD carries are going to be massive in team fights where it all comes down to execution.
Yeah, 100%, and honestly, the Sivir gives you multiple chances to win. Imagine trying to close with Riddle's composition against a Sivir comp. It's very difficult to do, and these champions will continue to be relevant later on. Maybe you get to a state where the game is so late, gold leads basically don't exist. These options are still open for Ruddy with their composition, so definitely not out of the game yet. Definitely still have options, but Riddle firmly in the driver's seat until that point.
And with this composition, I feel like there are so many ways that Riddle can make these acceleration plays and go a little bit further. Why are you crying, Banderas? You're having an absolutely chill time. Like, Sad B not necessary, but like when you've got stuff like a Camille, a Wukong, a Lissandra, these are champions that love diving under towers, have ways of resetting aggro and being a little bit sneaky. So if Nita and Denvoxne just want to farm and scale up, Riddle have ways of shutting that down and preventing those late game options from being a reality that Ruddy can play towards.
Yeah, they do. At that point, you're just looking to the passage of time, and I guess it's all entirely going to be about that severe wave clear. But at least Ruddy get the first Infernal. That's actually quite huge. It's not just a boost to damage, it's also a boost to the potential healing that the Yuumi is going to be able to give the rest of her team later on in the game. And that could be very huge for them. Also, these kinds of ratios going up in terms of AD and AP matter a lot when you have caster-based champions. And Sivir, yes, she does a lot of autos, but she is fundamentally a caster champion. So one Infernal, that actually can translate to a pretty significant amount of gold later on in the game in real terms. So they're getting what they can. They're getting what they can, right?
Yeah.
Not entirely out. I want to know what they do with Lissandra now, because she's been quite static. Now they have her finally moving in towards bot side, and they're looking potentially to catch out Sivir as she moves back. But you also have No Name, and you have Nitra on this rise, moving in to try to actually give Sivir the clearing and not be so afraid of a potential Lissandra getting her before she hits tower.
No Name definitely wanted to take that Q. There was definitely a small part of No Name's brain that was like, go on. Yeah, go on.
Lee syndrome.
I believe that's what it's called. But
yeah,
do you know what?
I remember
Credit to him, he's slowed down the silly mistakes. Ruddy have stopped bleeding the gold as much, whether that's a case of improvement of play or Riddle just waiting for an opportunity to use the lead that they've got for themselves around this top side. It's yet to be seen, but with that Divine Sunderer now completed for Banderas and now for Johan, this is a duo that you really cannot scrap against.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, this game against two teams where they didn't really explode their games until 15 minutes, we've had a bit of action early, but we are seeing these kinds of slow, methodical plays again, mostly just reactions to mispositioning so far. But this Herald's going to get dropped, the map's going to open up, and we're going to start seeing the brains, the craniums on these two teams, and stop talking about players in terms of duos and start talking about them in terms of 5.
I think that's where both these compositions are going to function most strongly, right? There's split push potential for Banderas and Lissandra with that spellbook as a champion that could move to side lanes, get a bit of a shove, and going to have to be matched against Knight a bit. The 5v5s are really what this game is going to come down to.
Yeah. 100%. And what you could end up having there is Camille being used in the flank position. Lissandra goes all in, and then Camille comes out of her flank spot and joins her in the backline. You have double, potentially triple dive, and Zeri can be left alone in those triple dive situations in a way that other champions simply can't be. Is the anti-dive there for Ruddy? That becomes a question of K'Sante. It was going to become a question of Lee Sin. Let's see if they can still be useful at those points.
Going to be a tough call. And I did like that you touched on Reptile. He was the player sort of coming out of draft who we were looking at being the real carry for this Riddle composition. I've always liked about Reptile as a player is not particularly flashy or very show-offy, but he's very, very reliable. And when you're looking at a role, his only job really is to do damage. Having someone who's reliable, will exist in laning phase, even if he isn't played towards, and then pop off on teamfight, it's brilliant, and it fits perfectly for a champion like Zeri.
His debut split on Prime League showed some pretty incredible team fighting out of him. He won Rookie of the Split there. And he showed yesterday why he was able to claim that on Unicorns of Love. And, you know, he's looking to get to EUM and prove that he is still of that caliber. This is definitely a game to do it. Obviously, there's been a lot of action topside, but again, that's been topside responses to stuff Ruddy's been doing, rather than Riddle saying, we want to play around that topside. This being opportunistic more than anything. I still believe this game plan firmly entails this Zeri's team fighting in mind. I mean, look at that composition. If anything's built to team fight, it is that. Or, you know, Ruddy's composition, of course, also looks like something built to team fight.
And this is, again, what we were talking about, the smart elements of Reptile's gameplay. Yes, he's lost the first tower, but you saw Nita and No Name rooming down, starting to cheat down towards bot side. Reptile and Keeper had stayed, probably both dying alongside that tower. So whilst they lose out, it's not as bad as it could have been.
Yep, and this right here is an area where Riddle are still open to criticism. Johan absolutely playing good for his own economy, but on these kinds of bridge champions, do you really want them Voxnay to be sat there 5 plates and a full tower ahead with 2 waves ahead? No, but yet he knew that he was bot side opposite of where Johan was. Johan took the time there to secure his top side, but also to secure his camps, and not necessarily to be where they could most likely force a favorable fight on that bot side and prevent them Voxnay being the win con for Ruddy, which right now he absolutely is. And this is an AD carry that's been a mainstay since his first split of the NLC, winning since his first split in. This guy has technically never lost a split that he's played in NLC. He has a 100% win rate there, both in reverse sweeps. He's a very mentally fortified player. You don't want this guy to get too much for free.
That's true, right? Well, it was Summer 21 with Tricked, and then he was Mad Lions Madrid in spring, came onto Dusty 2022 summer, won the entire thing, won the Aurora Open as well, just for the fun of it, and now he's back on Ruddy, who, again, despite falling down a little bit earlier in this game, still absolutely in a fine position, and still one of the teams that we're looking at to be contesting the top spots of the NLC this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, they made a statement yesterday, but so too did their opponents. Their opponents also showed that you can't give them anything. They know how to play with it. And Riddle, this game, they are the guys that have opened with the lead. But Ruddy, they have to think they're confident that some of their win cons have gotten at least a bit what they want. Look at Civi's inventory right now, and look at Zeri's inventory, right? Should be fairly confident that he's going to be more viable in a team fight. Riddle, though, they're putting a lot on this Camille. They're now playing away from the Zeri. They do think this Camille is where it's at. Let's see if they're able to pull it off. We have seen split push comps work with success lately. Let's see if they're able to do it.
I'm going to be real honest with you, veteran. I just want a fight to happen at some point. Because the game has slowed down
I'm fed up of all this.
A reasonable degree.
Alright, I'm done with all this.
It makes sense. It makes sense to a certain degree, right? Because I feel like when you are playing against another strong team, which both these teams find themselves in that position, a way that you can often lose games is just by making a silly mistake that the enemy team is going to punish absolutely ruthlessly and without any sort of prejudice at all. So playing a little bit of a slower early game, a little bit of a more passive style, especially when you do have scaling carries on both sides, I think is a natural reaction to this matchup, but really does beg the question, when do one of these teams decide, okay, we're strong enough now to really start fighting?
1 minute and 52 seconds when Baron comes up and they start contesting every ward in topside river. Or, if not then we're looking in 2 minutes and 30 seconds when the next Drake spawns, which I believe is a Hextech Drake, which will actually be really big for both teams. Civic can get a lot off with that. With the Hextech Soul, Reptile can get a decent amount off with that. With the Hextech Soul, Camille loves that as well. So actually a pretty good Soul coming up. But yeah, until then, neither team really has a reason to go and fight No Name. And both teams seem to understand that. And so they're just kind of staring off at each other, wondering how many times the casters can say, well, Ruddy can scale, well, Riddle also has scaling options, well, Riddle have good teamfight stuff, and I guess Camille's doing stuff, well, Ruddy have good economy on them Voxnay, and he's going to scale, and, you know, they're just going to see how long we can do that and string that out for.
Hopefully not too long. We have had Harold summoned in the mid lane. This will get a charge, but it's not going to be doing too much damage to that. That takes it to around about 50% HP, but the thing about Sivir, the thing about Rise, is you stick him in mid lane and the wave disappears.
Yep. And now the waves are meeting. Zeri is clearing, and Sivir is pressing 2 buttons, and the whole wave is gone. And Zeri is finishing the clear, and now then Voxnay is taking control bot. And the next wave's coming in. And we'll do it all again, boys!
Oh,
you guys remember how we do this. You rolled in 2014, 2015, Jin Air. How long was it?
Oh, no, hold on. It's
game?
20 minutes. It's 20 minutes, veteran. We're not in Jin Air territory yet. Come on, man.
There's even, oh god, I have to tell you, way back in 2016, behind the scenes, right? We were the next game on after Origin Fnatic, and that game was lasting like up to the 70-minute mark, right? And I'm not joking, the production guys were telling us that they were getting really worried because they don't actually know what the tournament client does when it goes past this point. And they don't know if they're going to have to like redo the entire game or something like that, or what's going to happen. They were really scared. Oh, do you remember that? We talk about severe stalling, but there was ZZ Rot Portal. That was where it was. They were all buying ZZ Rot Portals. And so, yes, stalling can get... We should thank our stars that they only have a Civet. There were strats back in the day if you wanted to keep a game going.
Well, you sell an item, buy a ZZ Rot, place it in base, sell the item, then buy back the... Oh... Well, thank goodness that's not in the game anymore.
Against all... Yes, I mean, this game's gone through some iterations, but you know what's being there through all of them? Sivir. And she's here again.
Is she one of the original 40 champions?
I don't know. She might be.
She's been around for ages.
Yeah. She's had a few reworks, but she's fundamentally always been this wave clear behemoth. And here we go.
Very difficult to deal with.
Remember in the Matrix game, these neutrals were where everybody looked for the 5-man. Now you have a choice.
I think we're going to fight. I think we're going to fight. Fire rate flashing. Forward instead. Voxnay is being jumped onto, but he is somehow still alive. Banderas chasing him down with the ultimate and will claim the shutdown as Riddle are looking to take over the rest of this fight. Nita rooted, shooted in the back. The Glacial Claw going forward. No Name on the run, but he's not going to be able to take that cat to safety as she is locked in place, taken out. It's a triple for Reptile, and Riddle come to life.
6-0. We were looking to either the Baron or the Drake. It turned out to be the Drake because they just want to go as late as humanly possible. And they found the window onto them Boxnay. Did them Boxnay get a lead in the early? Sure. But we're going to throw everything we have at him, and we have a lot. The 2 kills on Camille did some heavy lifting there. Replay starting a little bit later. I would have liked ZB's already dead there. But they got him, and we're then able to clear up the rest of the team with the powerhouse of the Sivir down. The game is firmly in Riddle's favor, and so far that has meant that the game would go into Riddle's favor. Every time in the NLC so far where we've had a team win one of these crucial team fights in the mid to late game, right, that has been the team that wins. Let's see if that's going to remain the case, or if Ruddy find a way to pull things back in.
And veteran, Reptile, didn't have a fun time in lane, was chilling, didn't die, but he lost his tower. He did fall to that disadvantage to Voxnay. But as soon as it hits 20 minutes, as soon as Reptile starts grouping up with the rest of his team, you can see why so many people rate this guy so highly. He is immaculate when it comes to those team fights. And now Riddle, 4,000 gold in the lead, a couple of Drakes as well. It's an advantage that he can start to press forward. And Ruddy now firmly on the back foot for, I think, the first time this game.
For sure, but here is the big difference in the compositions, right? You don't really have these heavy diving options on the side of Ruddy like you do on the side of Riddle, and Riddle's options went all in. Fire Rain and Banderas burned everything that they could to take out them Voxnay, and that ultimately won them the fight. And Ruddy don't have the same kind of tools to control Reptile. They said no to the Vi in Champ Select. They said no to things like the Hecarim that could maybe, with its move speed, make it all the way and chase into Kingdom Come. Maybe it's because the Lulu said no to those kinds of dive compositions, but because of that, Reptile has a lot of freedom that then Voxnay simply doesn't have.
It's a very well executed team fight by Riddle, and now 25 minutes near or nearabouts. They are investing multiple members. The pressure around the Baron. Banderas doesn't have the teleport available, so if he wants to join his team, it's going to be a fairly long trek towards the top side of the map, but it's very clear what Riddle want next.
Yeah, 100%. This Baron has so many wards scattering it, and can Ruddy even contest them at this point? Likely not a straight contest. Can they do a full split push against them? Try to get them away, try to take the wards back one by one? Nita was going for it, but after crashing that wave, already going for a grouping. But when Camille shows here, let's see what Ruddy does. Camille shows on bot lane, then Voxley immediately clears midsection, and the whole team shifts up to take the vision. So the split push is the way. Split Riddle apart, and oddly enough, Ruddy don't have to 5v5 them, and they lose those right now. So even though their team comp identity clearly wants to be going for some of these 5v5s, they do have options with the Rise, with the Kayssante to split push and split up Riddle at those points where they don't want to fight them. And much like Verdant had to do in our game early on against natives, Ruddy now have to have the discipline to do that consistently. Riddle, on the other hand, I think they have to be willing to maybe drop a tower, drop some minions, and just keep accelerating. They can afford to drop some of those so long as they get more on their side. The game is in their hands. Just be aggressive and be confident on it. Don't get fooled by Ruddy trying to split you around the map here.
Yeah, you need to advance the map state, because fundamentally, if you're not getting closer to Ruddy's base, it's just harder and harder to shut down the Rise and the Sivir. Eventually, they will be very powerful. Denvoxne now has that Navori Quickblades, now at 3 items on the Sivir, where she traditionally turns into something that is very, very difficult to contest, and that's only gonna get worse and worse as she gets more and more items. Reptile with the Infinity Edge as well. This Zeri is no slouch. The AD carries in teamfights are going to be so pivotal for the result of this game.
Yeah, interested to see how heavy the Navori Quickblade build impacts the Sivir as well. But yes, Reptile, 3-0 here, 3 items, one of the broken champs in the game with no real way to lock him down unless, you know, this Lee Rise pull off some absolutely insane stuff. Reptile pulls this off in these fights, and I don't see how they can possibly lose them. Drake is up, and it looks like another contest. We've seen this story before, but will it have the same ending?
Well, it's Ruddy who found their way into the river first. Fire Rain thinking about a flank on the bat side has now been spotted out. Dragon is down 4,000 HP as in goes the flash engage from the Wukong, and Ruddy are on the run. Riddle have already got a couple of kills for themselves as Johan is being taken low by Denvoxne, but the Sivir is dead. The cat will die as well, and Nita is the lone knight standing against the army of Riddle, who get another clean ace.
The turn by the Wukong, the flank by the Lissandra, another scenario where the Sivir just cannot play the game, the Rise just cannot play the game, and the Reptile can throw as much DPS as he wants to do. Honestly, this Lissandra, you're looking at her as potentially one of the weaker champions that would be coming in, but she's been pivotal 2 team fights in a row here. Her positioning's been really on, and it's been very impactful. And right now, Riddle, 11-0, looking to... Oh, they're actually a Drake down, so they can't technically perfect game, but at least looking to perfect kills against Ruddy. Not a single death so far.
And for Ruddy, contrast this with the game against Unique yesterday. Obviously, there is a difference in the level of the opposition, but... didn't expect the difference would manifest itself in such a tremendous lead for Riddle. Fire Rain is 5 levels up on Denvoxne. A lot of tools being used to try and kill this Lissandra, and they won't even be able to do it.
Just a little bit off there. 1 extra Drake, 1 extra reset, 1 extra kill before that, and that Lissandra's dead every time. But that right there is a big illustration of how far behind Ruddy are, to the point where Lissandra makes a mistake and it's not even a mistake anymore, right? Like, she can absorb that all she wants. Riddle, not just in control of the game, we're essentially waiting for them to close. Though, I've been scarred by Sivir games before, so anything is still somewhat possible. But realistically, we're just looking at a delayed Riddle win or a soon Riddle close.
I don't know, man. I feel like Denvoxne's got like a poster of Teddy, like just next to his computer, and he's just going to embody that.
All right, I'm gonna have to
remind you.
I'm gonna have to remind you, Middlecott, that Jin Air lost those games.
Yeah, Well,
They
I
just
think
lost
as it
very
stands,
slowly.
as it stands, Ruddy are set up to lose this game because it is an 11,000 gold lead for Riddle. They do have a Hextech Soul spawning in 3 minutes, and they did have a Baron earlier. Ruddy, though, not giving up, realm warping forward, looking to get a pick. They get the kick onto the Wukong, but no name. Ruddy incredibly low, and Riddle are actually turning this one around. Nita has got a kill. Reptile is trying to cut himself away, but he can't escape the Cassante. Rifty going all out and taking down the enemy AD carry. Banderas, though, he's in the base, taking structures, and Ruddy are going to be forced to respond.
Okay, but 3 kills for them. You're likely losing that bot lane inhib anyway. Imagine if you try to defend that and you end up in a 5v5. I think you just lose the whole thing. I think they'll be happy to take that and just try to stall the game. Don't lose any more inhibitors, sure. But this is more than you would expect them to get at this point. At least Ruddy have shown they're not going to go down without a fight. Some crucial kills going over to Cassante, who can be an unkillable behemoth, and one towards the Rise, who does a deceptive amount of damage later on in the game, though obviously it's difficult for him to play against the kind of control Riddle can do with their Lissandra and with their Wukong, and at this stage, with their Camille.
An important consequence, actually, of the shutdowns that went over to Rifty is that Anathema's Chains completion. I'm going to bet that's targeted on Reptile, because if you can CC this Zeri, if you can take her out, then the teamfight power of Riddle goes down a fair bit. Yes, Banderas is in an absolutely terrifying position, although it wouldn't surprise me if he spends the rest of the game on a side lane looking for Nexus towers.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's how you should play out the Camille at this point. But, you know, if Ruddy can get more picks like that before she's able to take out that tier 2, then maybe it doesn't even matter so much. She doesn't have the Baron buff rolling anymore, so Ruddy have more time to work with. Maybe even Ruddy try to get the pick on that Camille, but they have to be ahead on rotation against the rest of the full man that Riddle have. There are windows, but Riddle has to open those windows for Ruddy. Ruddy, honestly, still on course to lose this game. There's just glimmers of hope, but they are just glimmers, and they aren't the eventual win that Ruddy wants.
Those glimmers, those embers may be extinguished in 40 seconds as Hextech Drake becomes available, and with the lead that Riddle have built for themselves, buff like that, with the additional power, may just be curtains for Ruddy.
I mean,
you can never count them out.
Blood off of this. You saw Verdant's manager earlier, you know, he wants Ruddy for himself, right? They've been a very loud organization, they've made a big name for themselves on social media. You know, a loss like this to Riddle opens the floodgates.
No name, what are you doing? You can't stand there, mates!
I mean,
that was inefficient jungle
noticing.
pathing, I believe, is the euphemism that we're going to use there. It's, Devoxy actually still alive for a little bit, but very, very low on HP. Nita forced into the Zonyas. It's been 3 kills, a double there for Reptile as Banderas is now chasing down Nash. It's as easy as you like for Riddle's top laner, and this has been a demolition of Ruddy Esports by one of their competitors at the top of the table in just under 34 minutes. Riddle will take a dominating win against Ruddy Esports.
I mean, more